Hello, I'm Malcolm Houslett. Welcome to Our Time. Have you ever been to the cemetery late at night? And what's happening with young producers in this world today? Well, you're going to find out next on Our Time. Welcome to Our Time. On a telephone call with our first guest in this episode, I discovered something very interesting, and that was that Tim Cousins actually takes guides, or is a guide taking, what do you call them?
Just nighttime cemetery tours.
Right. No, the people that do the tours with you.
We're a group of actors that do it.
No, the people that come for the tour.
They're just...
Scouting the land for the future?
No, they're just people who want a bit of enjoy, a bit of a history, bit of storytelling.
Fascinating, isn't it? Really?
Love the cemetery idea, so they come in to hear about what we want to talk about, the various characters.
So is it dark?
Yes, so we start our tours during daylight savings at 9 o'clock and during non-daylight savings 8 o'clock. So it's all dark. The actual tours exist. We have lanterns which each of the guests get. Now,
spooky!
Those lanterns have both audio and visual on them.
Oh, right. Okay.
So in some places it plays audios for telling the stories. But there's lights and there's music and sound on those.
And you just stop people laying down in case?
Yes.
Right. But Tim, in all seriousness, you're not doing this because you just thought, oh, I woke up this morning thinking I'd like to be a cemetery tour guide. You're an actor.
Yes, yes.
Is being an actor in this day and age in a place like Adelaide a difficult thing to be?
As an amateur theatre actor, no, because the amateur theatre in Adelaide is actually enormous. I only got back into it a few years ago and started with one company, and I've realised how many other companies there actually are out there doing amateur theatre all over Adelaide, from as far as Tea Tree Gully right down to Noarlunga.
Yeah, and there's
Victor Harbour.
In Victor Harbour, and there's some groups, of course, over in Port Pirie, or up in Port Pirie and Whyalla and Port Lincoln.
So they're all over the place.
What is it? Is it a basic need of people to want to perform, do you think? Or is it what makes you want to be a thespian?
For me, it's just I enjoy the characters. I enjoy losing myself in a particular character for a period of time. For a long time, I like a lot of people, I started my theatre in school, doing a couple of school productions. Caesar and Cleopatra was the first one. And then
something simple.
Yeah, something simple. I just played lots of parts in that.
Right.
But then that group continued on after school as a group called Theatre One. And we did a number of productions. Doctor in the House was one that I appeared in with them. Ghost Train was another. But then I got married, started a career in disability, and of course, shift work doesn't lend well to auditioning and rehearsing. I can
understand that.
So for about 25 years, I took a break from theatre as my family grew, and I had to look after them. And then in recent times, things have happened, and I've been able to go back to the theatre. So back in 2016, I started back with the Tea Tree Players.
That's great, because it is a hobby in itself, but it's a hobby that gives you so much back, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. I mean, the audience reactions you get is just, you come off and you're buzzing. You really are.
But it's like creating a family group every time you do a show.
Yes, well, they're a little community. All the theatre groups I've been involved in, you form a little community of theatre people. And in Adelaide, they tend to get to know each other, because if you work in different groups, there's people all over the place.
There's the crossovers, but that's good.
Yes.
We used to have a saying that if you're in show business in Adelaide and you don't know everybody, you're not in show business in Adelaide as well. But getting back to the cemetery, so how did you find out about being a tour guide?
Well, I actually am one of the characters. There's another gentleman and lady that do the actual guiding. What happened was 2018, I was looking to branch out. I'd done a lot of stuff with Tea Tree Players, but I wanted to try some different places. Got in contact from Noarlunga Theatre. They were doing a version of Vicar of Dibley, and they'd seen my face on somebody's Facebook page and thought I'd make
okay.
thought I'd make a good
Facebook's amazing for that, isn't it?
Yes. So thought I'd make a good Jim Trot. So auditioned for that and got that part. And while I was doing that, Facebook came up with auditions for the cemetery, and I went, "Oh, that's interesting. I like that sort of."
But it is interesting, actually.
Oh, it is very
because it's history.
And that's the thing. That's what I liked about it. It was the fact that it was history. So I applied. They sent me a script for a particular character, and I went in and auditioned. Now, the character I originally auditioned for, I didn't get. And but while I was doing that character, one of the three panelists sort of sent a note down along the line, "Let him try Bert. Let him try Bert." So they gave me the script. I had a quick read through, and I just.
It was you.
And it was me. I love the guy, actually. I really enjoy the character. He's a lesser known Adelaidean, but a very important one within particularly the West End area.
Right.
He was quite an interesting man in that he was a gay man in the early 1900s when it wasn't accepted.
Yes, that would have been difficult.
But openly, like he was flamboyant. The costume I wear when I do the character is all white with red cummerbund and braces, and so he's really quite an out there character. Ian Purcell actually did a musical based on his life called King of the West End.
Oh, okay. I sort of vaguely remember that.
Yeah, so, and that was done, I think, 2018.
Right, right.
So he was a councillor, he was a Labor politician, but he was a people's man. Like they called him the King of the West End because he really cared about the people of the West End.
It's funny because West End, to most people in the theatre world, of course, we think about London and the West End in London, but our West End is quite small, really.
And so he grew up in that area, and
yes, as did Roy Reen, grew up in that area, who's a famous Australian comedian that I suppose in his day was the Paul Hogan of the time. But you know, a lot of people don't know about the history of these people.
No.
So this is a great way to bring it.
No, well, we have a
Pity
number
they had to die to have their story told.
We have a number of people on the tour that people don't know about but had huge impact. There's a lady, Mariah Gandhi, who was she was actually partnered to Colonel William Light.
Oh yes,
sort
I've
of
heard that story.
Non-de facto partner.
Yes,
and then actually married George Mayo, Dr. George Mayo, and you know, looked after him and was part of him. So she was very prominent, but.
Yeah, yes, we don't know much of our history in Australia, unfortunately, and part of the reason for that is because at school, not about you, but for me at school, at both primary and high school, we learned a lot of English history, but very little about our own history, both here in South Australia, in particular, if you're in Melbourne. The history of Melbourne is probably better known than the history right here.
Well,
okay, so just talk us through, how does it work? So we arrive slightly excited?
People arrive from 8:30 on, they tend to arrive. As actors, we're already in the little, our version of a green room, and we're getting ourselves all organised.
In the crypt. They're down in the crypt.
In the old cottage, actually, at the front of the cemetery there. So while they're getting ready, they wait for everyone to come. They bring them into the front area of the cottage, and then they do a little spiel about what's going to happen, and they give them all one of these lanterns.
Right.
Now, the tour guides, and we've got two tour guides, Tam McIntosh and Mick Young, and they take it in turns. And most of the characters, we have two actors to play them. So for Bert, there's myself and Brian Godfrey.
So you're not there every night?
I'm not there at every night.
Right.
It just depends on availability of both actors.
Right. And of course, you haven't been able to do this for a few
No,
months.
since, the festival. We did the Fringe Festival. We've done that twice now.
We all did that, and everything stopped straight after that.
And it just stopped, and that was the thing.
So do your characters and the characters pop out from somewhere, or?
So basically, while they're being given the talk, we slip out the back and move to our various places.
Right.
Now, Bert has a very distinct...
Do you frighten them?
No, we try not to. We try not to. There is one lady that comes out carrying an axe, so there's a bit of sort of... But it's not a scare tour, it's a history tour.
Yes.
And Bert's an interesting one because he was buried in a double plot. He chose to be. He's got
Sideways.
this great big double plot. He can,
Buried sideways.
any way he could go in an amazing coffin. I think it was a copper coffin or something.
Right.
So it's quite unique.
Well, he planned to come back as you.
So in some parts, well, I do sometimes wonder. With my character, a lot of them come out from behind trees, but not to scare, but just sort of pace themselves
Well,
out.
it's the atmosphere, isn't it? It's the cemetery after all.
Whereas mine's slightly different because there's nowhere to really hide, and Bertie's wearing an all-white suit, so it's pretty hard to hide Bert. So I actually sit on the corner of his grave, and I just sit there waiting, and people come up and they can see this character sitting there. I'm looking at the ground, so they can't actually see my face at that point. And then when I hear my name, I look up at the crowd and start to do my spiel.
Amazing time. Look, if you're living in South Australia and you're looking for an interesting evening, sounds like a great idea. This is the cemetery on South Terrace.
West Terrace.
West Terrace, sorry.
Yes.
West Terrace. There isn't one on South Terrace.
So Eventbrite, where we do our tickets through.
Right.
So
I must do this. I think that's absolutely fascinating.
I absolutely love doing it, and I love playing Bert because he's such a character.
Yes.
He really did light up the West End and
brilliant,
create a
brilliant.
personality.
Stay with us because we have a young producer, director, writer to meet in just a tick. Welcome back to OurTime. I really wanted you to meet our next guest. Her name is Rachel Stone, and she's a 17-year-old theatre writer, producer. Are you an actor too?
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, acting is one of my biggest passions.
Okay, and she had a sellout show in the Adelaide Fringe called The Boy My Father Raised, which was about family violence. She's still at school and still, is this your last year?
Yeah, year 12 this year.
And you're also a boarding student, is that right?
I'm a boarding student as well.
Does that make you boring?
It makes me more interesting.
Rachel, I was genuinely impressed with you because you did your shows at my theatre, and that was just fantastic to have somebody your age with a cast and crew that were also in your age group and to come up with such a strong idea that was so relevant in today. So tell us your backstory. You were born?
I was born in Adelaide, Women's and Children's Hospital, as most people are.
Queen Vic with me, which has now become a series of apartments.
There you go.
I'd love to know which room I was born in. I'd knock on the door and say, I was born here. Sorry.
Oh, good. Born in Adelaide, and then I've grown up on York Peninsula on a farm halfway between Curramulka, Port Julia, but a quarter of the way up from the bottom. And I went to Curramulka Primary School from reception to year 5, Maitland Lutheran School from 6 to 9. And then in year 10, I came up to Adelaide on a scholarship as a boarding student.
What was the scholarship?
Oh, it was just in relation to like a sister school partnership that we had. It was basically like, the easiest one to get.
So were you writing plays or doing this as a kid? Did you know you had this interest? No.
Never writing plays, always acting. Grew up acting, doing amateur theatre in the country and doing courses in Adelaide with like Heesum and like NIDA and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And then...
That's Heesum casting you're talking about at the Film Corporation here.
Yep. And then when, it came to the time when we were like, we want to do a show and we couldn't find a script, we just decided to write one. And that's how I got into script writing.
So you say we?
Oh, yeah, myself and best mate, Jacob Ronneberg. It's quite funny, at the time of when I actually asked Jacob to get on board for writing the script, I knew that Jacob wanted to do like sports journalism, and I figured that's writing.
Close.
Yes, close to script writing. So I got him on board, and then we tried to write a script and then rewrote it.
Well, you did. And in truth, you tackled a subject that's always difficult to handle because you're talking about a parent age group dealing with a child your age group and how the effect of a parent on a child, how it can affect the child and their future, their relationships, their school, everything.
Yeah, 100%.
So did you base this on somebody you knew or was it just observation across the board?
Yeah, so early in year 11, myself and Jacob were in a talk where Aman Abrahimzadeh came to our school, and he's co-founder of the Zara Foundation, and, you know, a well-known name in Adelaide, obviously with his story with domestic violence and abuse and his mother. And he came and talked to us, and his story really stuck with me at the time. Like, this is before I was even thinking about doing a theatre show. It really stuck with me at the time just because of he explained his relationship with his father, and I was really fascinated by the sort of, like, he had, like, obviously, you know, all of this resentment and unforgiveness towards his father, but there was still a sense of, like, love there. That,
Father.
Exactly. And I thought that was really interesting. So when it came to a time when we were like, well, what are we going to write this show about? Myself and Jacob thought back to that, and we thought, you know, there's really good potential there for a script. And we wanted to, obviously we didn't have that much background in domestic violence, and we didn't really, you know how to approach it. So we wrote it from someone who was our age's perspective, drawing on, like, our own personal knowledge of what it's like to be a teenager, and also on the, you know, what we know from Amman and lots of research and psychologists and all of that kind of thing.
So how did you pull it together? Because it's not just writing a script. So you've got to get a group of people who have some degree of acting ability. You've got to find a venue. For something like The Fringe, you've got to go through the process of registering and getting your press release stuff and your photos done, all of that stuff. Because no one actually sort of really teaches this, do they?
No, they definitely do not. No. And I think working in there sort of is the best way to learn, though. Like, just doing it is the best way to learn. It was a fair process, like, I'm not going to lie. I got a fair bit of help from mates who I just asked. Like, I had a couple mates who were into photography, and I was like, this one will look good on your resume for free, surely. And, you know, they got around it. We got a lot of support there. And I think, you know, I had to get over my hatred for reading the instructions and actually do a bit of research into how to do this. And so basically just going with what was written on the Fringe website and taking it step by step. It was a bit hard at the start because it seemed like, you know, to get a venue, you had to have a script, but to get a script, you had to have a venue and know what dates to, you know, if you wanted to, like, hire a script or, you know, use a script or whatever. So, you know, it was basically doing as much as we could ourselves to try and dodge money that we didn't have. And
but Rachel, this is
like
in truth how so many of the great people start. They have to start somewhere. They can't afford to buy a product. And so they create it themselves. And I'm a great believer in that, because I think our stories, our Australian stories, are unique, particularly if we come from a specific place in Australia. And here in South Australia, with a thing like the Adelaide Fringe, it does give people like you the opportunity to find a platform to do these things. That's why a thing like the Fringe is so important. You don't have to be famous from somewhere else. You can actually create it here. And what's more complimentary is you had basically sell-out audiences for all of your shows, which is extraordinary in a Fringe, because in Fringes, most local shows have 5 or 6 people turn up.
Yeah, I've got a lot of good friends.
No, but that's called marketing.
Yeah.
And you did that very well. You also did a great job of controlling your cast, which might sound like a funny thing to say, but when your best friends are involved, it's difficult.
It is.
There must have been funny things that happened.
Oh.
Like losing cast members.
Oh, well, you're not wrong there, Malcolm. You're not wrong. Yeah, this cast there was just ups and downs, and I think everybody was so different and with varying levels of experience. I had people who I'd been going to school with who were in my drama class at school, and I had people who, you know, had only done one show before, and people who wanted to make it in film acting, and like all people from all different areas. And, you know, it's funny that you should mention that, you know, people dropping out and whatnot, because, you know, we did have to actually, you know, we did have some struggles there, and we did have to recast about halfway through.
Well, as it was your lead role.
Yeah, well, it was the lead role as well.
It was the boy.
Yes, the boy did, he did end up, you know, being recast about halfway through, but thankfully we had Jacob, who had already working as assistant director and had already co-written the script, and he was no better person to step up into the role.
He knew what it was all about.
Exactly, and, you know, working with your best friend as well is is great because you can trust that your vision is going to come to light because you know that they know how you're thinking.
That's the word that actors talk about a lot, trust. Trusting that the person that's saying the lines is going to give you the line in a way you can react to it better back. So do you feel this is the beginning of the big future?
Oh, it's hard to say. I love the experience. Like, it was great.
I watched you and you've got what it takes.
Cheers.
Seriously.
It is definitely the start of something big, whether that be in theatre or not, I don't know now, but I think just...
When you say whether it be in theatre, you're talking about film or just communication generally?
Just anything arts. You know, I've got a huge passion in music and visual arts as well, and I think eventually I'm going to use, you know, everything that I've sort of picked up to sort of channel that into whatever area that I end up channeling it into. But I have got hopes to sort of pursue theatre further, but it will probably be on and off and with other things.
Oh, but in show business now it is. You sort of drift between one thing and another. Producers are producers. Some produce films. Some film producers produce theatre. Actors do both.
Yeah.
It's like if you're a producer, if you're a writer, if you're an actor, it's all sort of the same.
Yeah.
The jobs are the same. The media that it's delivered in is different.
Yeah, no, I'd love to take August Stone Theatre Companies. I'd love to take it further. I kind of want to shoot a documentary next, you know? I feel like there's a lot of potential now for documentaries.
Well, the good news is that here in South Australia, there are great universities that give you those opportunities and real opportunities for your future, where you'll also meet the other people just like you.
Yeah.
Stay with us for a tick. We'll be back in just a moment. We'll just find out a little bit more about the cemetery and we'll see if Rachel's got a bit more story to tell. Back in a tick. Welcome back to OurTime. I'm holding this book because Tim just gave it to me. It is the story of the character he plays, Bert Edwards, the king of the West End here in South Australia. Quite a big book and lots of pictures. I do like pictures. Here, look, a quick look at what's inside. You know, we know so little about our history here, as we said in your segment, but did you read this to get your background on the character?
No, that's only come out after I started playing the character.
Right.
I mean, some of the history, like the old tea rooms that often were gaming parlours behind the scenes, he had one over in Compton Street near the markets. Like that was, you know, 2-up games out the back on a Friday night. Now, that was the type of character he was.
See, we know a lot of this history about Sydney particularly, but not so much about Adelaide.
No.
And we had more women of the night here in Adelaide, I believe, at one point than anywhere else in the country. Who knew?
Well, we were also the murder capital of Australia.
That's right. Who knew? So much to learn and so little time. Rachel, with your, we were just talking in the break about you being a boarder, and we discovered you were both boarders, and you said something quite profound about being a boarder and about growing up.
Boarding's great. It's a great transition between childhood and adulthood, I think.
Because you've got still someone looking after you.
Yeah, you've still got someone looking after you, but you've also got a lot of independence, but there are set rules. It's different to like living alone or at a university on campus experience. So I think it's definitely great. Like, I couldn't recommend it like anymore as an experience.
You couldn't recommend it any more?
No.
Or any less?
Any less.
You'd recommend it?
Going to boarding is a good thing. Going to boarding is a good thing.
That's why you have an editor with a script.
Yes.
Listen, it's been just a pleasure to have you on the program, both of you. Good luck with the ghosts.
Thank you.
It'd be interesting if suddenly you start hearing sounds yourself and they're not coming out of the lights.
True.
Yes.
True. Very interesting.
Rachel, good luck for the future. I hope that we see you again with another fantastic piece.
No, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will.
And thank you very much for joining us on OurTime once again. As I always say, keep yourself nice until next time we meet and take care. Thanks, guys.